I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. I was escorted out of the house 2 weeks before it. They didn't yell. They didn't explain. They just told me I had crossed a line, that I was no longer welcome. I was 22. Quiet, careful, the kind of daughter who never missed a curfew and always offered to do the dishes. My sister Rachel was the golden one, smart, social, radiant in every room. She was marrying Ethan Caldwell, the local pharmacist's son, and it was going to be the event of the year. My parents had the invitations printed before they even had the cake flavor chosen. And then, suddenly, I was the one who destroyed everything. What they told people was this. I introduced my friend Jessie to Ethan, and the two of them started an affair. What they told me, that I'd embarrassed the family, that I was jealous, that I was trying to sabotage Rachel's happiness. I stood in the living room with a suitcase already packed for me. My father didn't look up from his coffee mug. My mother said, "You brought this on yourself." I hadn't spoken to any of them in 7 years, until last month when a voicemail from Jessie changed everything. The last words my mother said to me were, "You should be grateful we're not telling the neighbors what you did." Then she handed me an envelope with $200 in cash and a folded list of local hostels. I remember the way she avoided my eyes like I was a stain she couldn't scrub off her version of family. No one asked me what happened. Not Rachel, not Ethan, not even my father, who used to drive me to school with a thermos of black coffee and call me his quiet shadow. I guess even shadows can outshine the wrong person if they're standing too close. Jessie tried to defend herself at first. She told me she had only met Ethan twice, once at that backyard barbecue, and once when she picked up her forgotten sunglasses. But Rachel had already spread her version like gospel. Jessie was called a homewrecker. I was branded the enabler. Within days, I was locked out of group chats, blocked from family emails, erased from the wedding website. My name was pulled off the printed program. They even cropped me out of a family photo on Facebook. It wasn't loud what they did. It was clinical, like closing a browser tab and forgetting it ever existed. I stayed with my college roommate in Detroit for 2 weeks, slept on her pull-out couch with my coat still zipped up. I kept thinking someone would call my aunt maybe, or Rachel herself, even if just to scream. No one did. I got a job at a bookstore on 9 Mile, worked double shifts, saved every tip. I didn't tell anyone what happened. When people asked about my family, I smiled and said, "We're not that close." But that was a lie. We had been close, until closeness became inconvenient. Years passed. I finished grad school, moved to Chicago, got my counseling license. Specialized in family trauma, though I never said why. My name went on certificates, podcast intros, conference panels, but not on Christmas cards, not on baby announcements, not on anything with the word Monroe in the return address. I didn't go to Rachel's baby shower. I wasn't invited to her divorce party either. Yes, that's a thing now. I watched it all from the outside like a ghost with good Wi-Fi. I told myself it didn't matter anymore. I told myself I'd built a life of my own. But sometimes late at night, lying awake in my tiny apartment, I'd remember the way Rachel once held my hand during thunderstorms, or how she used to braid my hair before picture day. I'd wonder if any part of her remembered that too. Then one day, I opened my voicemail. It was from Jessie, and her voice shook when she said, "Claire, I kept something. I think you need to hear it." When Jessie's voicemail landed in my inbox, I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for 3 days, just her name and that little speaker icon. I told myself it wasn't worth digging up old bones. I had a steady job, a quiet apartment, a coffee mug with my initials on it, and a cat named Baxter who liked to sleep on my chest like I was a pillow with a heartbeat. I didn't need answers. But of course, that wasn't true. The night I finally pressed play, I sat on my kitchen floor, back against the fridge, knees pulled to my chest. The recording was short, less than 3 minutes, but it cracked open something I'd been sealing shut for years. It was Ethan's voice, not drunk, not angry, just tired. "She found the texts," he said. "Not even anything bad, just flirty. And from someone else, not Jessie." But Rachel flipped. Told me if I left her, she'd make me look like the cheater. Said she'd pin it on someone close. She picked Claire because her words, not mine. "People already think she's jealous." He paused. I didn't stop her. I should have. But by then it was easier to let the lie grow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there listening to the fridge hum and the cat snore. and I let the weight of it settle on me like ash. All those years, all those holidays, all those family photos with me carefully removed as if I had died young and was best not mentioned. And now one voicemail had turned the whole thing inside out. I should have been angry, should have plotted some perfect confrontation, imagined Rachel's face crumbling in public. But instead, I made a cup of tea and stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I wanted it in a way they couldn't spin, couldn't bury under another family story about how Claire always had a flair for the dramatic. The next morning, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out something I hadn't touched in years. A small silver tape recorder. My dad gave it to me when I was 15, said it was for capturing ideas. I used it once to record Rachel singing along to a cassette in the car, her voice off-key and beautiful. I smiled at the memory. Then, I slipped the voicemail file onto a flash drive, labeled it The Version That Matters. That week I didn't sleep much. I re-listened to the recording. I wrote a letter I never sent. I even thought about calling my mother not to reconnect just to hear how she'd sound if she heard the truth. But I didn't call. Instead, I circled a date on my calendar, a date I hadn't planned on caring about. Rachel's second baby shower, at the house I was once told never to come back to. The baby shower was on a Saturday, mid-April. The invitation never came, of course, but Rachel posted about it anyway. A pastel photo of a cake shaped like a cradle, balloons in soft pink, dozens of comments from high school friends and women who now call themselves boy moms or girl moms on Instagram, and the location my parents' house. The same living room where they told me I was no longer welcome. The same dining table where Rachel once spilled lemonade on my college acceptance letter and didn't apologize. I hadn't been back in 7 years. That morning I dressed plainly. Black slacks, soft sweater hair down, no makeup. I didn't want to make a scene. I just wanted to hand them something. On the drive over, I kept my hands at 10 and 2 the way Dad taught me. I passed the gas station where he used to buy me Slurpees after dentist appointments. The library where Mom made me get my first library card. The streets hadn't changed. I had. When I pulled up, the driveway was full. SUVs, minivans, one Tesla. I parked down the street, walked slowly. My heels clicked against the concrete, steady, not rushed. I carried a gift bag. Inside, a small, stuffed elephant soft gray fleece, and a flash drive tucked beneath the tissue paper. Label The Version That Matters. Rachel opened the door herself. She blinked twice, smiled the way women do when they're afraid someone might ask the wrong question. "Claire," she said, tilting her head. "Wow, this is unexpected." "Hi," I replied. "I just wanted to drop something off." Her eyes flicked to the gift bag. "You didn't have to, but—" "Thank you." The hallway smelled like cinnamon and soap. Laughter bubbled from the kitchen. I caught a glimpse of my mother arranging finger sandwiches. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. I handed Rachel the bag. "You can open it later," I said. "It's not really for the baby." Rachel's smile flickered. "Okay." I turned to go. "Claire." She called after me. "You're not staying." I looked at her. Really looked. She still had that soft, polished look like someone who lives her life with a filter over it. But there was something under her eyes, a flicker of calculation, or fear. "No," I said. I already stayed longer than I should have. And then I left. I didn't wait to see her reaction, didn't linger to hear the audio play or watch the mask slip. That wasn't the point. The point was, for the first time in years, I wasn't the secret. I was the storm on the edge of their blue sky, and they had no umbrella. I didn't expect a reaction right away. People like Rachel don't break in front of others. They fracture quietly out of frame behind closed doors when no one is watching. But I knew the moment she'd open the gift. She'd pull out the soft gray elephant first, maybe even smile. Maybe even say something about how I always gave thoughtful presents as if we were still the kind of sisters who traded Christmas socks and inside jokes. Then she'd see the flash drive. Then the label, The Version That Matters. She'd freeze, or pretend not to. But her hands would tremble because even lies well rehearsed can't compete with a voice recorded in real time. Ethan's voice. It was unmistakable, not dramatic, not angry, just tired. heavy with the weight of years he let someone else carry the blame. Rachel said if I left her she'd make it messy, told me she'd pin it on someone close, said you were already quiet, already overlooked, that people would believe her. He'd paused then, and the pause said more than the words. I didn't stop her. I should have. But I didn't. The whole file was under 3 minutes, short enough to fit inside a memory, long enough to change one. I didn't stay to see how she handled it. I didn't want to. What mattered to me wasn't her expression. It wasn't whether my mother rushed to her side or whether the baby shower guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. What mattered was that for once Rachel didn't control the narrative. That truth had entered the house before it could be escorted back out. Later that night, I got a text from my Aunt Ruth. She's never picked sides. That's her thing, staying neutral, staying polite. Claire, I don't know what happened, but things got tense. Are you okay? I typed a reply, then deleted it. What could I possibly say in a text that hadn't already been said on tape? The next morning, another message lit up my phone, this one from my father. We need to talk. I think we've misunderstood too much for too long. There was no apology. No, we were wrong. Just that tightrope phrase that families like mine walk when they can't bear to name what they've done. I stared at the screen. Then I opened my desk drawer. Inside, I kept a printed transcript of the recording. It was clean, simple, and dated. I folded it into an envelope, wrote my name across the front in his handwriting. No return address. No note. No explanation. And I mailed it back to him, because I didn't bring flowers. I brought the truth, and the truth doesn't need closure, it just needs to exist. The first call came that Sunday night. Blocked number. No voicemail. Just silence on the other end. The kind that sounds familiar, not empty, but loaded. Like someone was there holding their breath, hoping you'd speak first. I didn't. Monday morning, my inbox had 3 unread messages, all from names I hadn't seen in years. The first was from my mother, Claire. I don't know what this was meant to do, but if you think humiliating your sister in front of her friends was the way to heal old wounds, well, I'm deeply disappointed. No mention of the recording. No mention of the lie. Just a continuation of the same script I'd grown up hearing. You're overreacting. You're making things worse. You don't know when to stop. The second was from Rachel herself. You took something personal and twisted it. That recording was taken out of context. You blindsided me, Claire, at my baby shower. I stared at that line for a long time. My baby shower. Like that moment, the gathering, the cupcakes, the curated perfection was the thing that mattered most. Not the years I'd lost, not the reputation I'd had to bury, but the disruption of her event. The third email was from Ethan. His was short. I heard it played. I should have said something a long time ago. I'm sorry. No excuses, no defense. Just a single line I hadn't known I needed. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was above it. Not because I wasn't tempted. But because silence this time wasn't powerlessness. It was control. For years, my silence had been used against me, proof that I was guilty, that I had something to hide. But now it served a different purpose. I wasn't erasing anyone. I just wasn't letting them re-edit me again. They tried in small ways, mutual friends reaching out secondhand invitations, a tag in an old photo with a comment that read, "Miss you, sis." But I wasn't going back. Not to the table where my seat had been pulled out. Not to the story that had never made room for my version. One afternoon, I walked into the studio where I recorded my podcast. I sat in front of the mic, let the quiet settle, and then slowly I said, "Sometimes the truth doesn't fix things. Sometimes it just stops the bleeding." That episode aired the next morning. I never mentioned names, never referenced my family, but they knew. And more importantly, I knew. That was the turning point. Not the flash drive, not the transcript, not even the voicemail. It was the moment I stopped needing them to hear me, because the story, the real one, was finally mine to keep. And I had already said enough. I didn't hear the full story until weeks later. And even then, it came in pieces, half-whispers, reluctant confessions from people who didn't know they were filling in blanks I no longer needed filled. The flash drive had done what I expected. It didn't explode the house. It cracked the windows. Apparently, Rachel left the baby shower early. claimed she wasn't feeling well. My mother tried to smooth it over, told the guests it was just hormones and stress. One neighbor said Rachel looked pale in a way she'd never seen before. No one mentioned me. Not by name. But after that day, I noticed things shifting. The family group photo disappeared from my parents' Facebook profile. A distant cousin sent me a friend request. Someone from Rachel's college sorority liked an old post of mine, a quote about forgiveness I'd shared 3 years ago, back when I was still hoping someone would offer it first. And then nothing. Just quiet. The kind of quiet you learn to live with. The kind that doesn't echo anymore. I kept working. Kept recording my episodes. Kept doing the slow daily labor of building a life with no scaffolding left from the one I was born into. Some nights I'd sit on my balcony with a mug of tea and wonder what Rachel told herself now. Whether she convinced herself it was all exaggerated, that Ethan had misunderstood, that I was vindictive, that trauma distorts memory. People like her always need a narrative that makes them the victim, but I wasn't waiting for her version anymore. The truth didn't come with fireworks. It didn't clear the sky. It just gave me ground to stand on steady, simple mine. And no one could take that from me again. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a single photo. Me and Rachel. We were 12 and 19, sitting on a porch swing. She was braiding my hair. I was laughing. On the back, one line written in pencil. I don't know when things broke. That was it. Not sorry, not I was wrong, just that. I didn't cry. Didn't text, didn't send a letter back. Instead, I placed the photo in a drawer with the transcript, the original recording, and my father's old letter, the one asking me to come home. I closed the drawer gently, then stood in the quiet of my apartment sunlight crawling across the floor like forgiveness that had nowhere to land. I hadn't returned to burn bridges or rebuild them. I just came to put my name back where it belonged, and now that I had, I could finally walk forward. Not away, not back, just forward. No apology, no reunion, no audience, just the sound of my own steps uninterrupted.
I never thought my 10-year-old Honda Civic would cause such drama at the annual Anderson family reunion. But then again, everything about me seemed to offend my husband's family's delicate sensibilities. The day started like any other awkward family gathering at the Anderson estate. David, my husband of 3 years, squeezed my hand as we pulled up to his parents' sprawling mansion in my trusty Honda. "Remember, it's just 6 hours," he whispered, trying to sound encouraging. "We can do this." I nodded, straightening my simple blue dress, another point of contention with the Anderson women, who treated every family event like a fashion show. Through the windshield, I could see Victoria, my sister-in-law, already nudging her mother and pointing at our car with an exaggerated grimace. "Oh look, Emily's still driving that. What do we call it?" "A vintage economy car." Victoria's voice carried across the circular driveway, perfectly pitched to ensure everyone arriving could hear. She stood next to her brand new Mercedes, strategically parked front and center. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I kept my successful real estate development company private. David and I had agreed early in our relationship that we wanted to live simply, away from his family's materialistic influence. What they didn't know was that, while they flaunted their old money, I was quietly building an empire, one that had recently acquired the very building where both Victoria and my mother-in-law, Margaret, worked. "Emily, darling." Margaret's voice dripped with false sweetness as we approached. "We must discuss getting you a more appropriate vehicle. What will people think? The Andersons have a reputation to maintain." David started to speak, but I squeezed his hand. We'd been through this dance before. He wanted to reveal my success to shut them up, but I'd always held back. Today, though, something felt different. "I appreciate your concern, Margaret," I replied smoothly, "but I'm quite comfortable with my choices." Victoria snickered, linking arms with her mother. "Comfortable with mediocrity, she means. Remember when she suggested hosting Christmas at her tiny house? The memory of that Christmas still stung. I'd spent weeks preparing, only to have Margaret and Victoria show up, take one look around my deliberately modest home, and declare it unsuitable for an Anderson gathering. They relocated the entire celebration to Margaret's house without even trying my carefully prepared dinner. As we moved toward the backyard, where caterers were setting up an elaborate spread, I couldn't help but notice the way other family members whispered behind their hands. The annual Anderson family reunion had always been more of a wealth showcase than a family gathering, with everyone trying to outdo each other with stories of their latest acquisitions and achievements. "David, sweetheart," Margaret called out, deliberately excluding me from the conversation. "Victoria's husband just made partner at Wellington and Reed. Isn't that where you're still just a senior associate? Perhaps if you hadn't been so distracted these past few years, you'd have made partner too." The implication was clear. I was the distraction, the reason David hadn't reached the heights his family expected. What Margaret didn't know was that David had actually turned down the partner offer, preferring to maintain a better work-life balance and support my growing business ventures. "Actually, Mom," David started, but Victoria interrupted with her characteristic squeal. "Oh my God, is that Uncle Robert pulling up in the new Bentley? Now that's an appropriate car for an Anderson." She shot me a pointed look. Some of us understand family standards. I watched as the family flocked around Uncle Robert's car, oohing and ahhing over its features. The irony wasn't lost on me. The building where he just leased an entire floor for his law firm was one of my recent acquisitions. As the afternoon wore on, the jabs became more frequent. Victoria's husband bragged about their recent Hamptons vacation. Margaret showcased her new tennis bracelet, and everyone seemed to have an opinion about my questionable lifestyle choices. "I just worry about your future," Margaret said, cornering me by the dessert table. "David's trust fund can only stretch so far if you insist on, what do you call it? Making it on your own." She made air quotes with her perfectly manicured fingers. I was arranging a piece of chocolate cake on my plate. Another faux pas according to Victoria, who loudly proclaimed she never touched carbs when Margaret dropped her voice to a theatrical whisper. "You know, it's not too late for David to consider other options. The Prescott girl is back in town, and she comes from an excellent family, with proper connections." The fork in my hand trembled slightly. This was new. Usually, they just implied I wasn't good enough. Now Margaret was openly suggesting David leave me for someone more suitable. "Margaret," I said quietly, setting down my plate, "would you say your job at Wellington Tower is comfortable?" She blinked, thrown by the sudden change of subject. "Well, yes, though I hardly see how that's relevant. The Wellington building is the most prestigious address in the city. Victoria was so fortunate to get a position there too. And you both enjoy working there. Emily dear," she patted my arm condescendingly, "when you've achieved a certain status in life, you understand the importance of prestigious locations. Not that I'd expect you to." "Interesting you should mention that," I interrupted smoothly, "because I've been meaning to tell you there are going to be some changes at Wellington Tower. Perhaps we should all meet there tomorrow morning, say 9 a.m. in the lobby." Margaret's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in confusion. "Why would we possibly need to do that?" "Oh," I smiled, reaching for my car keys. "I think you'll want to be there. In fact, why don't you bring a whole family? I have something rather interesting to show you." As David and I walked back to my Honda, Victoria's voice carried across the lawn one final time. "Look at them leaving early in that embarrassing car. She can't even handle a full Anderson family gathering." David opened the car door for me, his eyes twinkling. "Are you finally going to tell them?" I started the engine, listening to its reliable purr. "No, darling. Tomorrow, I'm going to show them." The next morning, I arrived at Wellington Tower 15 minutes early, parking my Honda in my reserved spot. The one marked owner that everyone assumed belonged to some mysterious investor. I'd never used it before, preferring to maintain my cover, but today was different. The lobby was already buzzing with early morning activity when the Andersons arrived in their luxury vehicles. Margaret and Victoria entered first, both wearing expressions that mixed annoyance with poorly concealed curiosity. David's father, Richard, followed with Uncle Robert, while various other family members who'd been at yesterday's reunion trickled in. "Emily," Margaret's voice echoed across the marble lobby. "I hope this isn't some sort of practical joke. We have very important meetings this morning." I stood calmly by the reception desk, wearing my cheap blue blazer that Victoria had once described as department store chic. The security guard, James, who had always played along with my desire for privacy, gave me a subtle wink. "Good morning, Mrs. Anderson," James called out. "Will you be joining Ms. Parker for the building tour?" Margaret's head snapped around. "Ms. Parker, you know Emily." "Of course," James replied with practiced innocence. "Everyone here knows Ms. Parker." Victoria stepped forward, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. This is ridiculous. Emily, if this is some desperate attempt to prove something. I held up my hand, silencing her with a gesture that surprised even me. Before we begin, I should mention that the construction noise on floors 15 through 20 will continue for the next few weeks. We're renovating those levels for a new tenant. Richard Anderson spoke for the first time, his business instincts clearly picking up on something. Yes, I smiled, pressing the private elevator button with my key card. Shall we start the tour? I believe Victoria's office is on the 12th floor, and Margaret, yours is on the 14th, correct? The family shuffled into the elevator, confusion evident on their faces. As we ascended, I began my explanation. 3 years ago, when David and I got married, everyone assumed I was after the Anderson fortune. What nobody bothered to ask was why I chose to work in real estate development or why I kept such a low profile. The elevator stopped at the 12th floor. The doors opened to reveal workers replacing the old Harrison and Wells Law signage with new branding. Victoria gasped. What's happening to our office? Your firm's lease is being adjusted, I explained calmly. Don't worry, you're not being evicted. Just relocated to a more suitable space on the 3rd floor. The rent will be more appropriate for your company's current market position. You can't do that. Victoria sputtered. Who do you think you are? The elevator continued upward, stopping at the 14th floor where Margaret worked. Similar changes were underway there. Actually, I continued, as the owner of Wellington Tower and 6 other buildings in the business district, I can. And I should mention, the rent increases we discussed last month will be going into effect immediately. The silence in the elevator was deafening. Margaret's face had gone pale, while Richard Anderson was looking at me with new eyes. You own Wellington Tower? Uncle Robert finally asked, his legal mind probably already connecting the dots. Through Parker Development Group, yes, along with the majority of the commercial real estate in this area. I turned to Margaret, including that prestigious address you're so proud of working at. The elevator continued to the top floor where my rarely used executive office was located. As we stepped out, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a stunning view of the city, a city where I owned more property than the entire Anderson family combined. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. You drive a Honda. I drive a Honda because it's reliable, practical, and paid for, I corrected her. Just like I live in a modest house because I choose to, not because I have to. My company owns properties worth billions, but I've never felt the need to flaunt it. Margaret sank into one of the office chairs, her perfectly composed facade crumbling. All this time, I confirmed, while you were mocking my car, my house, my clothes, I was quietly building an empire. The same empire that owns the building where you work, the country club where you play tennis, and yes, even that prestigious Hamptons resort where Victoria loves to vacation. David, who had been quietly watching this unfold, finally spoke up. This is why I turned down the partner position, Mom. I've been helping Emily expand her business instead. Richard Anderson cleared his throat. Why tell us now? I walked to my desk, pulling out a stack of folders. Because yesterday at the reunion, Margaret suggested David would be better off with someone else. Someone more suitable. So I decided it was time to show you exactly who you've been looking down on these past 3 years. I began distributing the folders. Inside, you'll find updated lease agreements for all Anderson family businesses operating in my buildings. You'll notice the terms are fair. I'm not vindictive. But I do expect a certain level of professional courtesy from my tenants. Victoria opened her folder with trembling hands. These rates are actually below market value, I finished for her. Consider it a family discount. Though I should warn you, the discount is contingent on good behavior. The following week's Sunday dinner at the Anderson Mansion had a distinctly different atmosphere. My Honda was now parked between Victoria's Mercedes and Margaret's BMW, but no one made a single comment about it. Instead, an awkward silence filled the dining room as the family picked at their meals. The roast is lovely, Margaret, I offered, trying to ease the tension. She jumped slightly at being addressed, nearly spilling her wine. Thank you, Emily. Miss Parker. Emily is fine, I said softly. Nothing has changed. I'm still the same person I was last week. Victoria, who hadn't made eye contact with me since the Wellington Tower revelation, suddenly burst out. How can you say nothing's changed? You let us make fools of ourselves for 3 years. David set down his fork. No, Victoria, you made fools of yourselves. Emily never pretended to be anything she wasn't. You all just assumed. But the little house, the old car, the simple clothes, Margaret gestured helplessly at my outfit. Why live like that when you could afford so much more? I took a sip of water, considering my response carefully, because worth isn't measured by what you own or what you show off. My parents taught me the value of hard work and humility. When I started my company, I promised myself I wouldn't become someone who needed external validation through material things. Richard Anderson, who had been unusually quiet since the revelation, cleared his throat. I've been doing some research on Parker Development Group. Your acquisition strategy over the past 5 years has been impressive. Thank you, I nodded. Though I suspect you're really wondering why I never mentioned it during all those family discussions about business and investments. He had the grace to look embarrassed. We never exactly gave you the chance, did we? The admission seemed to break something in Margaret. Tears welled in her eyes. All those horrible things I said. The way I treated you, suggesting David leave you. And all this time, you were more successful than any of us. Mom, David started, but I placed my hand on his arm. I never wanted to prove anything or hold power over anyone, I explained. I just wanted to be accepted for who I am, not for what I own. The fact that it took revealing my success to earn your respect actually makes me quite sad. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. The new office on the 3rd floor, it's actually nicer than our old one. The lighting is better, and the layout makes more sense. I know, I smiled. I designed it specifically for your firm's needs, just like I made sure Uncle Robert's new lease included the extra storage space he needed. And the country club's renovation will add those tennis courts Margaret's been requesting. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different, contemplative rather than awkward. I had a meeting with my board yesterday, Richard finally said. We're looking to expand our manufacturing division. I don't suppose Parker Development Group would be interested in a potential partnership. Before I could answer, Margaret burst out, Richard, after how we've treated Emily, you're trying to take advantage of her success. The sharp self-rebuke in Margaret's voice made me realize that perhaps real change was possible. Actually, I said, pulling up some plans on my phone. I've had my eye on the industrial park near the river. It would be perfect for what Anderson Manufacturing needs. I'd be happy to discuss a joint venture as equals. David squeezed my hand under the table, and I saw pride shining in his eyes. The rest of dinner passed with genuine business discussion, with both Richard and Uncle Robert treating me as a peer rather than just their nephew's wife. Victoria even asked for advice about her firm's expansion plans. As we were leaving, Margaret caught me by the door. Emily, wait. She twisted her hands nervously. That Christmas dinner you wanted to host, would you consider trying again this year? In your home, your real home, not what you thought we wanted to see. I thought about my comfortable house, chosen for its warmth rather than its size. Filled with books and memories instead of expensive artwork. I'd like that, I said. But only if you promise to actually try my cooking this time. She nodded, tears threatening again. And maybe you could teach me how to make that bourbon pecan pie you brought to Thanksgiving. The one I didn't even try. I'd like that too, I smiled, heading toward my Honda. As David and I drove home, he asked, do you think they've really changed? I considered the question carefully. I think they're trying. Sometimes people need a wake-up call to realize their values are misplaced. But true change takes time. And the manufacturing partnership with Dad is a good business decision, I finished. Personal feelings aside, it's a solid investment opportunity. Besides, I grinned, someone needs to teach your family the value of driving reliable cars. David laughed, then grew serious. You know what I love most about you? Even after everything, you're still just you. Success hasn't changed who you are. I pulled into our driveway, looking at our modest but happy home. Why would it? I have everything I need right here. And as we walked into our house, I knew that while the Andersons had finally seen my worth in terms they understood, the real victory was that I had never needed their validation to know my own value. The Honda would stay, the simple house would remain our home, and maybe, just maybe, the Andersons would learn that true worth isn't found in a price tag, but in the character of a person who never needed to prove anything to anyone. I never thought my son's 6th birthday photos would lead to a police investigation. But here I am, sitting in our living room at 2 a.m., unable to sleep as I stare at the images spread across our coffee table, each one more disturbing than the last. It started as a small celebration. Just Tommy, my husband Mark, and me. Mark's job as a traveling consultant meant he missed most of Tommy's birthdays, but this year he'd managed to fly home for the weekend. We wanted to keep things simple: cake, presents, and plenty of pictures to capture every moment. Our house, a charming 2-story colonial on a quiet cul-de-sac, was decorated with blue and red balloons, Tommy's current favorite colors. He'd been going through a superhero phase, so everything had to match his Captain America theme. I'd spent hours decorating the backyard, setting up his new swing set, an early present from Mark, and arranging the perfect backdrop for photos. The day went perfectly. Tommy was ecstatic about his gifts, especially the new tablet from us and the collection of action figures from his grandparents. Mark managed to assemble the swing set without too many consultations with YouTube tutorials, and I'd actually succeeded in baking a cake that didn't lean to one side. We sang happy birthday, took dozens of pictures, and watched Tommy blow out his candles. Everything was normal. Perfect, even. Until tonight, when Tommy asked to see the pictures before bedtime. He was curled up next to me on the couch, still wearing his Captain America pajamas, swiping through the photos on my phone. His excitement was contagious as he relived each moment, opening presents, playing on his new swing set, posing with his cake. Then he stopped. His little body went rigid against mine, and the hand holding my phone started trembling. "Mommy," he whispered, his voice so quiet I barely heard him. "Who's that man?" I leaned closer, thinking he was pointing at Mark in one of the backyard shots. But Mark had been wearing a blue polo that day. The figure Tommy was pointing at was wearing dark clothes, and it wasn't in the backyard. It was inside our house, visible through the dining room window in the background of Tommy's cake-cutting photo. "Tommy, honey, what man?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as I took the phone from his shaking hands. "The scary man," he said, shrinking against me. "The one who watches me sleep." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, watches you sleep?" Tommy's lower lip trembled. "Sometimes when I wake up at night, he's standing in my doorway. I thought he was Daddy, but Daddy's not that tall." I zoomed in on the photo, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The figure was partially hidden by the curtain, but I could make out enough to know it definitely wasn't Mark. The person was tall, unnaturally so, and seemed to be wearing dark clothing that blended with the shadows. But what made my heart stop was the fact that they appeared to be looking directly at the camera, at us. "Tommy," I said, trying to sound calm, "why didn't you tell me about the man before?" He shrugged, a gesture that broke my heart with its innocence. I thought it was normal, like Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. I quickly scrolled through the other photos from that day. In most of them, nothing seemed amiss. But then I found another one, Tommy opening presents in the living room. There, reflected in the TV screen behind him, was the same dark figure, standing in the hallway. And another, Tommy playing with his new toys, the figure visible through the glass doors leading to the backyard. And another, Tommy on his new swing set, the figure watching from behind the garden shed. My hands were trembling so badly now that I nearly dropped the phone. The photos were taken hours apart, meaning this person had been there the entire time, watching us, watching my son. And we'd had no idea. I grabbed Tommy's hand. "Sweetie, we're going to play a game. We're going to very quietly go up to Mommy's room and call Daddy. Okay?" He nodded, picking up on my fear despite my attempted cheerfulness. We made it halfway up the stairs when we heard it, the distinct sound of footsteps in our basement. Tommy's grip on my hand tightened. "Mommy," he whispered, "the scary man usually comes up from the basement." My mind raced through horrible possibilities. How long had this person been watching us? How had they gotten into our house? Why hadn't our security system detected anything? The basement door was visible from where we stood on the stairs. It was closed, but I could see shadows moving in the gap beneath it. Someone was definitely down there, moving around, coming closer to the door. I scooped Tommy up and ran the rest of the way upstairs, closing and locking my bedroom door behind us. My hands shook as I dialed 911 while Tommy huddled against me, his small body trembling. 911. "What's your emergency?" "There's someone in my house," I whispered, hearing the basement door creak open downstairs. "They've been watching us, watching my son. Please hurry." As I gave our address to the dispatcher, I heard heavy footsteps slowly ascending our stairs. Tommy buried his face in my chest, and I held him tighter, both of us sitting in the dark, waiting, listening to those footsteps getting closer and closer to our door. The last thing I remember before the police arrived was Tommy whispering, "Mommy, he's humming my birthday song." The next few hours passed in a blur of flashing lights and police questions. They searched our house thoroughly but found no one. The basement door was still open, just as we'd heard it, but the intruder had vanished. What they did find made my skin crawl. A makeshift bed hidden behind our old decorations in the basement's darkest corner, surrounded by food wrappers and water bottles. Someone had been living in our house. For how long, we couldn't be sure. Detective Sarah Martinez sat across from me at our kitchen table, her dark eyes serious as she reviewed the birthday photos on my phone. Tommy was upstairs with a female officer, drawing pictures of the scary man he'd seen. Mark was on the next flight home. "Mrs. Anderson," Detective Martinez said, zooming in on one of the photos, "your security system shows no breaches, no forced entry. Has anyone besides your family had access to your house recently? Maintenance workers? Cleaners?" I shook my head, clutching my cold coffee. "No one except the real estate agent who showed us the house 6 months ago." She looked up sharply. "You moved in recently?" "Yes, after Mark's promotion. The previous owners were an elderly couple who moved to Florida." I paused, remembering something, though our neighbor mentioned they left rather suddenly. Detective Martinez made a note in her notebook. "We'll look into that. In the meantime, I need to ask about these photos." She turned my phone toward me, showing the picture of Tommy on his swing set. "Look at the timestamp." I leaned forward, frowning. The photo was taken at 2:47 p.m. The next one, showing the figure behind the shed, was taken at 2:47 p.m. as well, exactly the same time. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We've checked all the photos," she said quietly. "Every time this figure appears, there's an identical photo taken at the exact same second without them. It's as if someone took another set of photos." I finished, feeling sick. She nodded grimly. "We found this in your basement." She pulled out an evidence bag containing a camera, not mine, but similar enough that you wouldn't notice the difference from a distance. "Mrs. Anderson, we believe someone was mimicking your actions that day. Every time you took a photo, they took one too. They wanted to show you they were there watching." A sob caught in my throat. "But why? Why would someone do this?" Before she could answer, her radio crackled. "Detective, you need to see this. Second floor, master bedroom." We rushed upstairs. 2 officers stood in my bedroom, one holding a UV light over my wall. In fluorescent blue, barely visible to the naked eye, were hundreds of tiny handprints. "They're child-sized," one officer said quietly. Detective Martinez turned to me. "Have you noticed Tommy sleepwalking, getting up at night?" "No," I said, but then remembered something that made my blood run cold. "But he's been complaining about being tired lately. Said he has weird dreams about playing with other kids in his room at night." The detective's face hardened. "Mrs. Anderson, I need you to pack some bags. You and Tommy can't stay here tonight." As I moved to get our things, she stopped me with a gentle hand on my arm. "There's something else you need to see." She led me to Tommy's room, where another officer was examining the ceiling vent. He'd removed the cover, revealing a small digital camera pointed directly at Tommy's bed. "It's wireless," the officer explained, "broadcasting to somewhere nearby." I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my mind racing with horrible images of someone watching my baby sleep, possibly for months. When I came out, Detective Martinez was on her phone, her voice tense. "The previous owners," she said after hanging up. "They're moved to Florida. We can't find any record of them actually arriving there. In fact, we can't find any recent records of them at all." A horrible thought struck me. "Detective, that corner in the basement where you found the bed, that's where Tommy said he sometimes heard other kids playing." She was already radioing for backup when we heard Tommy scream from downstairs. We raced down to find him pointing at the TV, which had somehow turned itself on. The screen showed a live feed of an empty bedroom, Tommy's bedroom. But it wasn't just Tommy's room we were seeing. The feed kept switching between different angles, different rooms, different houses, different children's bedrooms. "Mommy, Tommy whispered. That's where the other kids live. The ones who play with me in my dreams. Detective Martinez was already barking orders into her radio. We need units at every house on this street. Now. As officers rushed out, I held Tommy close, watching in horror as the TV continued its grotesque slideshow. My son wasn't the only child being watched. He wasn't the only one in danger. And somewhere, probably closer than we imagined, someone was still watching. The next 48 hours revealed horrors beyond our imagination. Police raids on every house in our cul-de-sac uncovered hidden cameras in 7 different homes, all with children under 10. The elaborate surveillance system was running through an underground network of old storm drains connecting our basements, drains that weren't on any city plans. Mark held me as Detective Martinez explained their findings. The previous owners, James and Martha Wilson, never existed, at least not the elderly couple you met. We found records of the real Wilsons from 1987. They disappeared after reporting their 6-year-old son missing. The house has changed hands 4 times since then. She continued, always sold by an elderly couple to families with young children. Always with the same pattern. The couple would move to Florida within a year, leaving no trace. I thought about the camera footage, the hidden networks, the years of planning this would have taken. How many children? We identified 12 missing children cases connected to this neighborhood over the past 30 years, she said grimly. We're searching the tunnel system now. Tommy hadn't spoken much since that night, but he'd drawn dozens of pictures. Children playing in dark rooms, a tall man in black, and something that made the detectives exchange worried looks. A recurring symbol of a butterfly with numbers beneath it. It's a signature, Detective Martinez explained, spreading out Tommy's drawings. We've seen it before, connected to an underground organization that targets children. They've been operating for decades, but we've never been able to trace them. Until now. The investigation moved quickly after that. They found the broadcast center hidden in a concealed room within the storm drain system. Sophisticated equipment, years of recorded footage, and files on hundreds of children across the country. But what broke the case wide open came from Tommy himself. The butterfly man had friends, he told the child psychologist during his interview. They came to my birthday party, but they looked different then. Not scary. They looked like the people who live here. His words triggered a massive operation. Within days, arrests were made across our seemingly peaceful neighborhood. The friendly mailman. The woman who walked her dog every morning. The school bus driver. All part of an elaborate network. All wearing perfect disguises. All watching our children. The elderly couple who sold us the house. They were caught trying to flee the country, neither elderly nor a couple, but master manipulators who'd been running this operation for years. When they searched their latest Florida address, they found evidence linking them to similar operations in 12 other states. Tommy's dreams of playing with other children, they had been drugging him through his bedroom vent, testing a new technique on all the neighborhood kids. The thought of what might have happened if we hadn't discovered those photos still keeps me awake at night. 3 weeks after Tommy's birthday, Detective Martinez visited us at the hotel where we'd been staying. Her face told me she had news she didn't want to share. We found them, she said quietly, in the deepest part of the tunnel system. The missing children from all those years. She couldn't finish. I didn't ask for details. Some truths are too heavy to bear. We sold the house, of course. Moved across the country. Changed our names. Tommy's in therapy, dealing with what happened better than any of us expected. Children are resilient, they say, but sometimes I catch him checking his bedroom vent just to make sure. Mark installed the most sophisticated security system available in our new home. I've gotten rid of every smart device that could possibly be hacked. Some might call it paranoid, but they didn't see what we saw. They don't know what we know. Last week, Tommy drew his first picture without a butterfly in it. It was just our family standing in front of our new house, smiling. The child psychologist said it's a good sign. He's finally feeling safe again. But sometimes, when I'm reviewing our security footage late at night, a habit I can't break. I think about those other parents, the ones who never knew what happened to their children. I think about how close we came to being one of them. And I think about that birthday photo, the one that saved not just Tommy, but possibly dozens of other children. If he hadn't noticed that figure in the window, if he hadn't been brave enough to tell me about the scary man, Yesterday, Tommy asked if we could have a birthday party next year. A real one, with friends from his new school. I hesitated, the memories still too fresh. But then I saw the hope in his eyes. Of course we can, sweetheart, I said. But this time Mommy's going to take all the pictures herself. He hugged me tight and whispered, "Don't worry, Mommy. The butterfly man can't find us here. I checked all the vents myself." As I held him, I realized that while our story had a happier ending than most, it would never truly be over. The organization was still out there, despite the arrests. Children were still disappearing. But now people know what to look for. Police departments across the country are checking real estate patterns, investigating suspicious elderly couples, examining storm drain systems. And every night, I say a quiet thank you to whatever made Tommy look twice at that birthday photo. Sometimes the monsters hiding in the background of our perfect pictures are real. Sometimes they're wearing our neighbors' faces. And sometimes it takes a child's eyes to see the truth adults have been missing all along. It's funny how life's biggest revelations often come on the most ordinary days. For us, it was a rainy Sunday afternoon, the kind where you find yourself digging through old memories just to pass the time. Our daughter Sophie, 8 years old and already as curious as her mother, had been begging to see our engagement video. "Please, Daddy, Mom says you did it at the big fountain with all the lights." She'd been fascinated ever since her friend's older sister got engaged last month. I found the dusty USB drive in our bedroom closet, tucked away in a box labeled Wedding Memories. Emma, my wife of 10 years, was curled up on the couch with her usual Sunday coffee when I walked in, Sophie bouncing excitedly behind me. "Look what we found, Mom," Sophie squealed, climbing onto the couch. I caught a flash of something in Emma's eyes, hesitation, maybe fear. But it disappeared so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. "Everything okay, honey? Just surprised you still have that old thing," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The video started playing, and for a moment, we were transported back to that magical evening. The fountain at Richardson Park sparkled with thousands of tiny lights, and Emma looked breathtaking in her blue dress. The one she'd chosen specifically because I once mentioned loving her in blue. "You look like a princess, Mom," Sophie gasped. I watched my younger self fumbling with the ring behind my back, so nervous I nearly dropped it twice. My best man, Jake, stood off to the side, supposedly filming but clearly struggling with the camera. The angle kept shifting. "The camera work is terrible." I laughed. Jake never could hold anything steady. Emma didn't laugh. She was staring at the screen with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Then I saw her hand move toward the remote. "Turn it up," she said quietly, "at 2:13. "What?" "Just, please, Daniel, turn it up at 2:13. I grabbed the remote, confused but curious. The timestamp showed 2:11, 2:12. At 2:13, while my past self was mid-proposal, a whispered conversation in the background became audible. Jake's voice, speaking to someone just off camera. "It's done." She signed it without reading the fine print. "Your son's assets are protected, Mrs. Harrison." My mother's voice replied, equally hushed. "Good. Daniel's too blinded by love to see what she really is. At least now, when she shows her true colors, he won't lose everything like his father did." The remote slipped from my hand. "Sophie, sweetie." Emma's voice was steady despite the tears I could see forming. "Could you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy and Daddy need to talk. But I want to see the rest." "Now, please." Once Sophie's footsteps faded upstairs, Emma stood up and walked to her desk. The drawer opened with a creak that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. She pulled out a thick envelope, yellowed with age. "I found this last week while cleaning," she said, placing it on the coffee table between us. "Our prenuptial agreement, the one Jake rushed me to sign right before the proposal. He said it was just standard paperwork for the park rental." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The prenup was unlike anything I'd ever seen. If we divorced, Emma would get nothing, not even her own business assets that she'd built before our marriage. There was even a clause about proven gold-digging attempts that would leave her legally responsible for all marriage-related expenses. 10 years, Emma's voice cracked. "For 10 years, I thought I was crazy. Every time your mother treated me like dirt, every time Jake made those little comments about my background, every time you defended them, I kept telling myself I was imagining things. Emma, I had no idea about this. You have to believe me." I do, she wiped her eyes. That's what makes it worse. They manipulated both of us right from the start. Your mother never got over your dad's second wife taking half his money in the divorce. She was so convinced I was another gold digger that she orchestrated this whole thing. The pieces started falling into place. Jake's insistence on handling the proposal arrangements. My mother's constant presence in our early marriage, always watching Emma like a hawk. The way Jake would make subtle digs about Emma's modest upbringing at every family gathering. The fountain wasn't even your idea, was it? Emma asked quietly. I closed my eyes, remembering. Jake suggested it. Said you'd mentioned loving that park. I hate that park, always have. It's where my parents told me they were divorcing. The weight of a decade's worth of manipulation settled over us. Every major moment of our marriage had been tainted by this secret plot, this hidden document, this betrayal orchestrated by the people I trusted most. Why didn't you say something when you found the prenup last week? Emma's laugh was hollow. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that all these years of feeling like an outsider in your family weren't just in my head. Then Sophie wanted to watch the video, and I remembered Jake filming everything that night. I hoped that the truth would be there. I finished. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. Your mother's voice? She didn't even know me, Daniel. She just decided I was a threat because I wasn't from money like your family. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Don't, not yet. I need you to understand something first. Emma stood up, pacing the room. For 10 years, I've lived with this cloud over our marriage. Every time I succeeded in my business, every time I suggested investing our money, every time I wanted to make a major purchase, I second-guessed myself. Wondered if your mother would see it as proof she was right about me. The TV was still playing silently in the background. I could see myself sliding the ring onto Emma's finger, both of us smiling, completely unaware of the conspiracy unfolding behind us. What should have been one of the happiest moments of our lives had been poisoned by lies and suspicion. I need to make a call, I said, standing up. To Jake. No, I pulled out my phone. To my lawyer. We're going to make this right, starting with voiding that prenup. Emma's eyes widened. Daniel. Then we're going to have a long overdue conversation with my mother and Jake. But first, I held out my hand to her. I want to propose again. No prenup, no hidden agendas, no manipulative best man or interfering mother. Just us. For the first time since the video started playing, Emma smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. You really never knew. Emma, I've spent 10 years wondering why you sometimes seemed afraid to fully be yourself around my family. Now I know, and I swear things are going to change. As if on cue, Sophie's voice drifted down from upstairs. Can I come back now? I want to see Daddy put the ring on. Emma and I looked at each other, and despite the weight of everything we just discovered, we laughed. Our daughter's innocent excitement was a reminder that while we couldn't change the past, we could definitely reshape our future. But first, we had some justice to serve, and it would start with a simple phone call that would shake my family's foundation to its core. The next 48 hours felt like walking through an emotional minefield. After calling my lawyer, Richard Chen, who was equally appalled by the fraudulent prenup, we decided to handle this strategically. Rather than confront everyone separately, we'd deal with it like ripping off a Band-Aid. All at once. Sunday dinner at our house, I told my mother over the phone. And make sure Jake comes. We're celebrating Emma's new business contract. Emma raised an eyebrow at my lie, but I saw approval in her eyes. For once, we'd be the ones setting the trap. When Sunday arrived, Emma was unusually calm as she prepared dinner. 10 years of practice hiding my feelings in this family, she explained when I commented on it. Tonight, I finally get to stop pretending. Sophie was at her grandmother's, my father's widow Martha. Ironically, the very woman my mother had warned me about. The gold digger who turned out to be the only genuine parent figure in my life after Dad died. Jake arrived first, wearing his usual smug smile. Something smells amazing, Em. Still cooking like you're trying to earn your place, huh? I saw Emma's hands tighten around the serving spoon, but her voice remained steady. Actually, Jake, I thought we could watch some home videos before dinner, for old time's sake. Before Jake could respond, the doorbell rang. My mother swept in, perfect as always in her designer outfit and pearls. Daniel, darling, but where's Sophie? With Martha, I replied, watching her face sour at the mention of my stepmother. We thought this should be an adults-only dinner. We gathered in the living room, Jake and my mother exchanging a quick glance that I would have missed if I hadn't been looking for it. Emma connected her laptop to the TV, and I felt my heart race. Before we discuss my business news, Emma said smoothly, I found our engagement video the other day. Jake, since you filmed it, I thought you might enjoy seeing your handiwork. The color drained from Jake's face. Oh, that old thing. Nobody wants to see that. I insist. Emma's voice was steel wrapped in silk. The video began playing, and I watched Jake and my mother grow increasingly tense as the timestamp approached 2:13. When the whispered conversation became audible, Jake jumped to his feet. This is ridiculous. It's obviously been doctored. Sit down, I ordered, surprising even myself with the authority in my voice. We're just getting started. Emma pulled out a folder. This is the prenup you tricked me into signing, Jake. The one you and Mrs. Harrison conspired to create. She turned to my mother. Did you know it's illegal to fraudulently misrepresent documents during marriage proceedings? My mother's perfect composure cracked. Daniel, surely you understand we were protecting you. From what? I demanded. From the woman who helped me build my business, who supported me when I wanted to leave the family company, who gave you a grandchild you've spent 8 years treating like she's somehow less worthy because of her mother. You don't understand. My mother's voice rose. Your father lost half his money to Martha, yes. The woman who stayed by his side through cancer, who made his last years happy, who still checks on me and loves Sophie unconditionally. Unlike you, who's been poisoning my marriage from day one. Jake tried a different approach. Come on, Dan, we were young. I was just doing what I thought was best. By betraying your best friend? Emma's voice cut through his excuses. By spending 10 years making subtle jabs about my background. Tell me, Jake, was it worth it? Did she pay you well to help destroy our happiness? The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face had gone from pale to red. Everything I did for this family. No, I corrected her. Everything you did out of bitterness and prejudice. And now you're both going to face the consequences. I handed them each an envelope. Inside, you'll find papers from my lawyer. Jake, you're being sued for fraud and legal malpractice. Say goodbye to your law license. Mother, you're named as a co-conspirator. But more importantly, I took Emma's hand. You're going to lose your son unless you make this right. You're choosing her over family? My mother's voice shook. Emma is my family. Sophie is my family. You're just someone who spent 10 years trying to break us apart. Jake opened his envelope, his hands trembling. Dan, please, my career. Should have thought about that before you betrayed me. I stood up. You have 24 hours to sign those papers, admitting what you did and accepting the consequences. If you don't, we go public. I'm sure the Bar Association would love to hear about a lawyer tricking someone into signing fraudulent documents. My mother started crying, real tears or manipulation. I couldn't tell anymore. Daniel, everything I own is in the family trust. If this gets out, then you'll lose it all. Emma finished. Just like you planned for me to lose everything if Daniel ever discovered your imaginary gold digger scenario. The irony seemed to hit my mother like a physical blow. She stared at Emma with new eyes, perhaps finally seeing the strength that had always been there. The dinner's getting cold. Emma said calmly, you should both leave. We'll expect those signed papers tomorrow. Oh, and Mrs. Harrison. Emma's composure cracked slightly. Sophie's 8th birthday is next month. If you want to be there, you'll need to do a lot more than just sign papers. You'll need to change. After they left, Emma and I stood in our kitchen, the untouched dinner growing cold. Are you okay? I asked her. She smiled, and for the first time in 10 years, it reached her eyes completely. I feel like I can finally breathe. But Daniel, are you okay? That's your mother and best friend we just destroyed. I pulled her close. No, we just held them accountable. There's a difference. Emma relaxed into my embrace. Sophie's going to have questions, and we'll answer them honestly. She needs to know that standing up against injustice is more important than keeping the peace. As we stood there, I realized something profound had shifted. The invisible weight that had been pressing down on our marriage for a decade was finally lifting. But as Emma's tears soaked my shirt, I knew this was just the beginning of our healing journey. Tomorrow would bring either signed papers or a legal battle. But for tonight, We had won something more valuable than any lawsuit. We had reclaimed our truth. 1 month later, Sophie's 8th birthday party was in full swing in our backyard. Kids ran around playing games while parents chatted near the refreshment table. But my eyes kept drifting to the corner where my mother sat, looking smaller somehow without her usual designer outfit and perfect makeup. The signed papers had arrived the day after our confrontation, along with something unexpected, a handwritten letter from my mother requesting therapy sessions together. Jake had simply disappeared, moving to another state according to his wife, who left him after learning the truth. "Your mother's actually playing with the kids," Emma remarked, joining me by the grill. "Never thought I'd see the day." It was true. The woman who once refused to sit on the ground because it might wrinkle her clothes was now helping Sophie and her friends make flower crowns in the grass. The therapy was working, slowly but surely. The past month had been a roller coaster. After the papers were signed, Emma and I created a new legitimate prenup, one that protected both of us equally. But more importantly, we started our own therapy sessions, unpacking a decade of hidden tensions and rebuilding our foundation. Sophie asked me something interesting this morning, Emma said, watching our daughter laugh with her grandmother. She wanted to know if we were happier now because we fixed the broken video. I smiled. Leave it to an 8-year-old to simplify something so complex. What did you tell her? That sometimes fixing broken things makes them stronger than they were before. The wisdom in those words struck me. Our marriage hadn't just survived this crisis, it had transformed. Emma no longer second-guessed her place in the family. I no longer felt torn between loyalty to my mother and love for my wife. The truth, as painful as it had been, had set us all free. Martha, my stepmother, appeared with the birthday cake, ready for the big moment. As everyone gathered to sing, I watched 3 generations of women in my life, Martha, my mother, and Emma, working together to light the candles. The sight would have been impossible a month ago. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Emma called as Sophie closed her eyes. After the cake was served, my mother approached us hesitantly. "Daniel, Emma, I've been doing a lot of thinking in therapy, about control, about fear, about letting the past poison the present." Emma tensed beside me, but her voice was gentle. And I was wrong. About everything. I was so scared of losing another family fortune that I never stopped to consider I was losing something more valuable. My son's trust, my granddaughter's love, the chance to know an amazing daughter-in-law. Tears ran down her cheeks, and for the first time in my life, I saw my mother as she really was, not the powerful matriarch, but a wounded woman whose fear had driven her to wound others. "I found this yesterday," she said, pulling out an old photograph. "It's me, right after your father married his first wife. I was so young, so sure I knew everything about love and marriage. I wanted to protect you from making what I thought were my mistakes. Instead, I nearly ruined your happiness." Emma took the photo, studying it. "You look happy here." I was, before I let bitterness change me. My mother touched Emma's arm. "Can we start over? Not just playing nice at parties, but really trying to be a family." Before Emma could respond, Sophie ran up with her flower crown. "Grandma, I made this for you. And look, Mom helped me make it perfect." The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. 3 generations, creating something beautiful together. My mother placed the crown on her head, tears flowing freely now. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Just like our family." Later that night, after Sophie was in bed surrounded by new toys, Emma and I sat in our backyard. The party decorations swayed in the evening breeze, and somewhere inside, my mother was helping Martha clean up, another small miracle. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Emma said, curled against me on the porch swing. "That engagement video. How something that was meant to hurt us ended up healing us instead." She was right. Without that accidental discovery, we might have spent another decade living under the shadow of lies and manipulation. Sometimes the most painful truths bring the most profound healing. "We should make a new video," I suggested. "Our real story. For Sophie, when she's older." Emma smiled, including the part where her daddy finally stood up to his mother. Including everything. The good, the bad, and the healing. Speaking of which, I pulled out a small box. "I believe I promised you a new proposal. No hidden agendas this time." Under the same stars that had witnessed our first engagement, but with hearts unburdened by secrets, We began again. And this time, the only voices in the background were the wind in the trees and our daughter's peaceful breathing drifting down from her open window. Sometimes life's biggest plot twists turn out to be blessings in disguise. Our marriage hadn't just survived a decade-old conspiracy. It had emerged stronger, truer, and more beautiful than before. Like Sophie's flower crown, we had taken broken pieces and woven them into something new. And somewhere in our house, an old video gathered dust, not as a weapon, but as a reminder that love, when it's real, can survive any revelation.